Productive Pastor 73, how to do something that you've been putting off. What's going on, my friends? Productive Pastor 73, how to do that thing you've been putting off, because I've been putting off a lot of stuff. I've been putting off actually recording this own episode because I've had a little bit of a funk the last few days. And I was trying to hold off as long as I could because I don't want to sound gnarly. But you know what? The episode had to get recorded. So you get gnarly chat a little bit. Gnarly voice. Hope I don't start coughing. All that sort of things. But it's great to have you back on the show. Things are exciting in Productive Pastoral Land. But I'm stoked to be here with you today. But talking about this thing, this idea of putting things off. Because I don't know about you, but I'm kind of bad about that. And sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's unintentional. And sometimes it's just like downright dangerous. That's the main topic of the conversation today. Before we jump into this, I want to point you towards one thing. Each week, I write an email. I follow a monthly focus and drill down each week to kind of clarify that focus out, that idea a little bit. I just wrapped up sending out an entire month of emails about organizational complexity in the church. If you're not getting these, go to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/073 and sign up for the Productive Pastor email list. Would love to send those straight to you every single week. And that's it. So let's go ahead. Let's get in with the primary content for this episode today because I'm kind of excited to talk about this, but I'm also nervous to talk about it a little bit. But let's just jump straight into it. So how to do something that you've been putting off. Like I said earlier, I've been putting off a few things lately. I've been putting off stuff that I know I need to do because I don't want to do it. I've been putting off some stuff that I know I'm not going to get into yet because I've got other more important things that have to get finished, like the Trello course, got that out last week. I have all sorts of stuff. I was kind of backflowing for that, but then also sometimes I have to put things off because other things have to happen first. But what we're going to talk about is when you're putting things off, like in a bad way, like in a gnarly way. And, the first thing we need to think about is why. Why are we putting it off? There's so much interesting things out there about the science of procrastination. But primarily what you find out about it, procrastination is it's not laziness. It's a couple of different things. One of the things is fear. We put things off when we're scared of some part of it. But here's the thing, and this is what I found out so many times. If we're scared, information clarity will turn on the closet light. It will show the monster is not in the closet. I get scared of putting things off because I'm scared of paperwork. I'm scared sometimes I'm going to do something wrong and I'm going to have to pay for it a year or 10 years in the future. When we were buying, both the two times in my life, my wife and I have bought houses, I had so much anxiety because I was terrified that some tax form I had filled out years ago I had done wrong and was going to come to light in the discovery process of buying and selling the house. It's just, fear is the thing. And there's sometimes I procrastinate doing stuff that is simple, easy, normal things because I have this weird, unnatural fear of doing things wrong. But to start, so many ways that we have to think about is, we have to find a way for the outcome to be worth it. That's especially when we realize that our energy is involved or something like that. But we have to ultimately ask ourselves why. Like, why are we putting this thing off? What's at stake? What might this give us if we get this done? How can this change us? How can this change our ministry or our family or the home or all that sort of stuff? You have to ask yourself the why, and you have to realize that the end result is going to bring something that's worth it to you. I struggle with getting distracted. One of my primary strengths is an activator. I love to start things. I get so much energy off of starting things. I have to tell myself multiple times a day, Chad, don't do that. Chad, don't do that. Chad, don't do that. Because I get energy. I get a quick bump of energy from starting something or experimenting with something or seeing something, that sort of stuff. So what I've had to learn to do slowly over the last decade or so is train myself to enjoy the outcomes as much as I enjoy starting things. But you're going to have to ask yourself the why question. Why am I putting this off? What's going on? And you'll begin to find some motivation inside of that. The second thing I've learned about the idea of why we put things off is this. We have to overwhelm the overwhelm. Sometimes we put things off because the entire dadburn project seems so monumental, we're terrified of jumping into it. And that's really what we're going to kind of talk about today. Because it seems so overwhelming, but the idea looming in front of us just seems completely unapproachable. But I heard this phrase from some country guy I was at a gas station with lately at church, and it was hilarious because he asked the old question, how do you eat a frog? And I was, I know this one. I know this one. It's one bite at a time. He said, no, you bite the head off first. I love that. How do you eat a frog? You bite the head off first. Like you do the thing you're not going to want to do that's going to instantly stabilize the situation. And today what we're going to talk about is that head biting off of the frog idea of getting started on things we've been putting off. Because this is the deal. Your pre-work to understanding this should make the overwhelm go away. You should be able to dig down into the pre-work, into the planning of it, and realize, okay, yeah, this actually isn't that big of a deal, and I have a way where I know how to go through this now. So let's go into the how. Let's bite the head off of the frog and get into it. The first thing is set some time aside. Literally just say, I'm not going to do anything, but think about this thing I've been putting off for a long time. I'll be honest with y'all. Friends, I've been living in the house I live in right now for 14 months. We bought this house because it had a detached pool house with a second kitchen in it. I love to cook. If you follow me on Instagram at Rev Chad Brooks, you'll see some of my cooking escapades. It had a gas stove already in there. And one of the reasons we bought this house was, hey, I can build out my own kitchen, a separate office space in there, and just have this beautiful, amazing room that's completely mine. 14 months later, we had the budget for it. We put money aside for it, the whole 9 yards. Friends, 14 months later, there are appliances in there. I have gutted it. I put insulation in it. We've had it sheetrocked. I've painted. I've got cabinets in there I've put in there. I've painted the cabinets, all this. And realistically, there's about 8 hours of work have been sitting undone for probably 2 to 3 months because I just forget about it. And I need to get this project done. And one of the things I've been thinking of the last couple of weeks is the outcome of having that space aside is going to just change everything. So Chad, let's just get the things done. So you set aside some time to realize, wow, this is what this can mean if I get this project done, get this thing, get it over with. My life can be better when I have this. So get on a piece of paper. That's what I do. I did this last week. Get down a piece of paper. Make yourself a punch list. Don't worry about the order things need to be in or anything like that, but do a brain dump. Y'all know I love a good brain dump. But just drop down all of the things that you know need to happen. And then once you feel comfortable that you've got them down on paper, then start building out a timeline. Think through, and I would encourage you, get as granular as you can. Get as small as you can. I'll tell you why later on. Completely, get down. If there's an errand that needs to happen before a task is done, put the errand on there, put the task on there, everything. And then begin building yourself out a timeline, and not just that this is the order things need to be happened in, but okay, I've got some time this week. I'm going to knock out 5 of these little tasks. Or I don't have much time this week, so I'm going to knock out 1 of these tasks. Or, hey, I can take a couple of days to devote completely to this. I'll put 15 tasks down. But work through how you can break down this project as granular as possible, but then also record it in a way that you can add to it, that you can take away to it, that you can modify it, build out your checklist, that sort of thing. Friends, in my weekly dashboard on Trello, this morning, I built out an entire Trello list for every single thing I can think of that's left to get done in this room because I want to get this done. So that's the first thing. Just set aside the time to plan how you're going to do this and all the things that actually have to get done. If you've got this massive facility project at the church, sit down, especially in those scenarios. We're talking ministry things. Get more people. So, 5 people trying to brain dump at the same time is going to be better than 1 person trying to brain dump. but sit down and set the time aside and just get everything down on paper. The second thing you start doing now is begin setting micro goals. Last episode, episode 72, start talking about task layering, the idea of the little, the medium, and the big. Remember the frog? You had to eat a frog, you bite the head off first. Think about that. Like, there are little ways and medium ways and big ways you can take care of that head every single day. What you might find out is there are things on that checklist that might not be time dependent and might only take 10 or 15 minutes to get done, and you can squeeze that into a day without really changing that much of anything. But think through your task layers and begin to set some goals, saying, okay, this is how much I'm going to get done of this week. I'm going to devote a medium level of time. So I'm going to devote a 2-hour block one afternoon this week to thinking through this or working through this, taking care of this punch list, that sort of stuff. But think about who and think about what can be working to accomplish this. It might be some times of delegation where you can go to somebody on staff and say, hey, listen, I know this really isn't inside of your purview, but we're all working on this. Can you give me an hour this week and make a run to these 2 stores to get these supplies that so-and-so might need? Begin to think about the little things, the medium things, and the big things, and set micro goals where it's, at the end of the week, you might not be done with the project yet, but you realized, hey, I set a goal to knock off 7 things on the task list. And you know what? We knocked off 7 of them. Let's high five at the end of the week. So set those micro goals as you move through the whole project. When I was developing out the Trello course, I think my checklist had actually 6 different checklists inside of it. And I realized that knocking off those sub checklists was an important thing and a thing to celebrate and to think through. So 2, set your micro goals. 3rd, plan to move forward. It's like I said earlier, 1 step is a win, because 1 step forward that you got done is 1 step closer to being done. Plan on how you're going to move forward. If it's something that's really, really big and you know that, hey, if I get this, I've got to have this one thing done in one big, huge shot, it's going to be significantly easier to do it that way. I'm going to find time to devote to give myself 5 hours this week to really hammer out this one thing, because there's not a stopping place inside of it. And so think through when you're going to be able to schedule out large blocks to take care of this. But also the last thing is modify the plan as needed. If I'm going back thinking through several different things that I've been working on, how many times halfway through you realize that you kind of have to go back to the drawing board a little bit? And here's the thing, that's okay. Don't let that pull you down. Don't let that make you stop doing the whole thing. Realizing hey, we're going to have to modify this. So let's make sure we're thinking through this in a way, expecting some modifications and some changes to have to happen. And it might mean you go back and re-brain dump again to take care of that, but always be planning to move forward. If anything, give yourself this. Say, I'm not going to have a week where this project remains absolutely stagnant. I'm going to make sure it at least gets 1 step forward each week, and I'm going to schedule the time to make that happen. So now the project is done, your post-project, and this is an important thing, especially if you're like me and you found yourself having to work intentionally through these sorts of things in your vocational career. I remember one time I put off sending this one email for months because I thought it was going to open up this big, huge can of worms. And I finally realized I'm at deadline phase. I've got to do it. And I did it. And the response back, whoop, thanks so much. This is all I need. Like, friends, our anxiety can get in the way of us doing these things sometimes. And so think through the way you react once the project is done, and just think through a couple questions. Number 1, what did you learn? Now, you might have learned things about your skill, your ability. You might have learned more of how you work or how you don't work, that sort of stuff. The second question you can ask yourself is this: what do we need to put in place so this doesn't happen again? Friends, so many times I'm coaching pastors that are going through things or seeing things inside of ministry, and they realize because something has been put off for months, if not years, the church is in quite the pickle. So you get the project done, and then the next question needs to be, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that this never happens again? What systems need to be in place? What policies need to be in place? What do we need to do to make sure we don't have to devote all this time again? I say that because sometimes in ministry we end up having to do things that are retroactive and take way too much time and resources because of a fear, or because somebody else didn't do something, or somebody didn't realize something was important for in the past. and we have to take responsibility to get it done. But ask that question, what do I need to put in place so this never happens again? And the third thing, think about this, how can I prevent this thing from never becoming overwhelming again? That's the second side of the question, because sometimes the thing that we are so super overwhelmed with is we neglected to do a tiny little thing for like 6 months that should have happened every week or every other week, and all of a sudden we realize we've got this other really important thing we need to do, but we can't do because we neglected this tiny little thing every single time. Those last two questions are somewhat related, but think about it. If something just has to happen every single week, remember how good it feels when it's done, and let that be a motivator to make sure it happens every single week again. So how do you do things that you've just been putting off for so long? I'm hoping that's giving you a little bit of an idea of just thinking through it. And what I'd love to do is invite you to come into the Productive Pastor community and just share a story like, okay, this is the thing I've been putting off, and I need some accountability to make sure this gets done. Because we've got 1,000 pastors in that Facebook group. We can keep each other accountable, my friends. We can be excited about this, because this is the thing I'll tell you, especially lately. I've been working with so many churches on getting their database in order. It seems insurmountable to get this done, and they realize after a couple of weeks of hard work, oh my goodness, the amount of ministry they can do is healthier, is more effective, the way they can communicate with people, all those sorts of things. That's just one project that I know I've seen churches put off and put off and put off, and it makes things so much better on the other side. So come hit me back on all the socials at Rev Chad Brooks. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I will be back with you next week.